All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming. Welcome to our next holiday themed town hall. This is St. Patrick's Day. Hope everybody liked our little spread that we have. Next one is Easter, so it'll probably be a candy bar. It'll probably be goodies and treats. So, thanks everybody for coming. We're going to start out with introducing some of our finance committee applicants, and so we'll start with Steve Miller, give a little wave, and Mitch McDonald. And Mitch actually made it onto our finance committee, and we'll talk about that crazy process that occurred. So.
Let's see, we got lots of handouts. I think there's 4 handouts. The agenda, I brought copies of Adam Harston's presentation that he did before the board. The information on the 1-page handout is what Mike and I submitted to the board as part of the permanent record. And last one is the answers that we got back from the general manager from the January town hall questions. So there's handouts there. And if everybody is at a break, we can start, now that everybody's sitting down, sorry, we can start by with the Pledge of Allegiance if you don't mind. So we can everybody just stand. Mike, you want to do the honors?
Yep. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you again, everybody, for coming. There's plenty of food. If anybody wants to take some home, I brought some Ziploc bags. Take some home. Set a plate for later on. You need that midnight snack. And please help yourself to all the desserts in the back.
So our usual moderator, Sean Frame, he's out campaigning, so we don't have him for this one. Hopefully he'll be back for our next one. I'm Mike Saunders, and this is Cindy Garcia, and we're here as we ran because our water matters and because our community matters. And one of the things is we know how hard it is for people to get to the regular general meetings, so we have these town halls to let people know the information that went by and to let people be able to have input and ask questions if they're unable to make it to the meetings. So we'll start out by the board resolutions from February's meeting.
When I put together the agenda, my intention was to put as much detail on it as I can, and we're not going to go through and read everything. You guys can do that on your own. We're just going to hit some of the high points. We wanted to put much detail in there because it's already been posted on the local Facebook pages, our town hall page, and we'll share it out so that other members who aren't able, of our community, aren't able to attend today and see the detail that we intended for everybody to have and we want to share. But just a couple of high points. The CABI grant. The CABI grant was grant money, and CABI stands for the Calaveras American Bear, or Consumnes, thank you, Consumnes American Bear and Yuba Rivers. It's a consortium of grant money to help water districts in those watersheds do programs, and we were able to secure some grant money, and we used that grant money to line some of the ditches with the gunite in areas where we kept having seeps and leaks and some blowouts. So the CABI grant was finished. Mike and I signed our resolution for the resignation of the board, the finance committee. As you know, we both volunteered to be on the finance committee. We resigned from that and did it officially, so that was the second resolution. The third one was just a reimbursement, and it was approval, so Director Souza could attend a CEQA conference. And then we always monitor statement of cash balances. Mike and I are particularly concerned with the budgets and the budget in the district. Both of us being on the finance committee, we saw some things that we questioned and we have gotten some answers for, but we still want to monitor the way the budget is planned, the way it's reviewed, and the way money is moved from one fund to another, or within a fund with one department to another. We want to make sure that we track all the transfers that are done, and kind of keep an eye on things. So One item of concern for me particularly is Fund 40. As you know, Fund 40 is the ALT zone fund for the wastewater facilities and septic systems in ALT. And historically, the customers in that area have been overcharged. They're overcharged for services so that Fund 40 has quite a bit of money in it, almost $1 million. And Mike and I are of the mindset that we need to do a cost of service study for each individual lot type, and that has been done. We questioned that study, and that study was part of a workshop that was done here at this location by the consultant who did it, and she was provided information from the district to come up with her numbers. And when she presented that information to us here at that time, for those of you that were not able to make it, what was interesting to me is, although we had that meeting in January, the numbers in her study were reflective from June of 2018. They weren't current figures, they weren't current numbers. And that doesn't seem right, that you would come up with a cost of service study for January using numbers in funds that were 6 months old. So things like that. Those are the kinds of things that we're keeping an eye on with Fund 40. There are, on any time that we have asked the general manager who is working in that area, we sometimes hear it's 1, sometimes 2 staff members full-time. And I've asked that their hours be put in their staff reports that are in the board meeting packets, so that we can kind of calculate hours with time, because in the last couple of months, they spent what I think is an exorbitant amount of money on staff and expenses, on labor and expenses for that area, for 2 people.
What was the number, do you know?
And it's, Stacy, check the agenda, I think it's like bullet point number 4 or 5, where it says
Okay.
statement of cash balances.
Yeah, I see it, okay, thanks.
So under for February, you're looking at 30,000 in expenses and 12,000 in labor. And then if you look at the agenda going forward, where we put the notes in from the March meeting, it looks like it was 10,000 in labor, or excuse me, 10,000 expenses, $11,000 in labor. $11,000 a month in labor for 2 people to work doing septic tank inspections and ALT seems a little high to me, so I'd like to see the hours broken out. Yes, Steve, you have a question?
I have something to add to that, because this is something that I've looked into, because I live in ALT. And that is, first of all, they don't always come out. And I used the example in the meeting that I put a piece of tape over one of the bolts on my cover. Yeah. And it was still there 9 years later. Okay. I got a notice on my gate one time, they couldn't come in because of my dogs, which are friendly, but they don't look friendly. And so to call GDPUD, and they would set up an appointment. So I called GDPUD to tell them that I got this notice and I'd like to set up an appointment. Well, you have to talk to so-and-so, and they transferred me into that department. And I got voicemail, and I left a message, and I never heard from them. So first off, I would say one of the problems is they're not diligent about checking every year to begin with. That's the first problem. Number 2, when you figure that there's 1,000 homes in there and they spend probably 30 minutes at each house, and give them another 10 minutes to drive from my house to the guy next door to do his, and the guy next door to do his, call it 40 minutes per visit. 40 minutes times 1,000 homes, or 1,100 homes, is not an annual job. I mean, it's a 3-month job, and yet they charge the labor for these guys for the entire year. Well, so are they put on hold? Do they put them in a box and says in case of septic emergency, break glass? No, they have them out doing all kinds of other things that is not part of checking the septic systems. But the people whose septic systems get checked have to pay for all that other activity. The third thing is that in the original contract, they came up with a $10.75 per month, which included the fact that they were negotiating with the lawyers to work the contract to begin with, because ALT was not going to do some of the things that they originally planned, which was a sewer system in the entire community. So they had all kinds of legal issues for that. They weren't going to build another 9 holes in the golf course. They had all kinds of legal issues for that, because they all involved water or sewage. And they also had all kinds of staff time putting proposals together to build the contract for GDPUD to do this. And that's all in the original cost, but it only happened the first year. And they had a responsibility the second year within the contract to go back and revisit the costs going forward. Never happened. So they've been charging $10.75 per household per month for 30 years.
District-wide. District-wide.
ALT.
Well, not district-wide.
Oh, just an ALT.
Just an ALT. So for $1,100. So that's why there's $1 million sitting in Fund 40.
Wow.
And now their answer is, well, how about if we reduce the cost for 5 years, so till the money's, quote, paid back. Well, what they're not taking into account is they don't even know what it costs to do it. And they've inflated it by the fact that they've got these guys on the payroll for a whole year doing this, but they're only doing it for 3 or 4 months. And there's no legal fees anymore, there's no contract negotiation fees anymore, which was probably over half of the original cost on a per monthly basis. So all the numbers are completely bogus. And then their answer is, well, we'll start reducing it. Well, if they reduced it by half, it's probably still an overcharge. But then 5 years from now, they figure that they're all done, and they've actually given us absolutely nothing back.
Well,
And
not
then they'll
only
boost the charges again to where they're overcharging us even more.
Well, not only that, they're not crediting enough people, some people what they should be credited. Some people have been living there for 30 years and had this overcharge, whereas some people have been there 5 years. So it should really be prorated on what the customer should really
Exactly.
get credit
Or people moving in tomorrow will get credit.
for somebody else who moved out.
That's right. They'll get a benefit if they move in tomorrow for somebody who's lived there for 20 years.
That moved out.
But didn't even move out. They're still not getting credit.
Yes,
So
Carol?
that reminds me of another question. GPUD just came to my door and wanted to do a sample of the groundwater, and they said they do it every 5 years, and I did see my name on their chart for 5 years ago. So I don't know if this is included in their duties to get paid for that, but what I'm wondering is anyone outside of ALT having GPUD check their groundwater? They said they send samples to a lab to see if there's anything bad in the water, and where they tested on my property, it was so dry they couldn't even get a sample. So what is, well, they went down 34 inches, he said, and with all the rain, they still didn't find water at the bottom. So is anybody else besides ALT having that check done? No?
I've lived up here 30 years and I've never had GPUD do anything with my septic system or testing my groundwater or even my drinking water.
Because of the zone has a requirement where they have to check if there's any excess waste in the runoff from the drainage from the septic systems, the way it's built in, and that's one of the reasons where there was a charge that was in the rate study of $70,000 that they had going over for 5 years, and I was like, wasn't this charge for the study to determine the capacity of the leach field? So they had to take that out, so it was even going to be inflated more. So you really have to look at everything. But with the excessive rains, as Adam mentioned in this last month's board meeting, he said they had, what was it, like something like 80,000 per day was the amount of gallons was going through the leach fields, and the state allows them to have 71,000. So we may be seeing another fine again.
Is this a ground study for those who are on the community septic in all?
The entire alt, yeah, because there's when
On
there's,
the community.
it goes for the entire zone. So based on the amount when there's excessive rain, they have to see what the capacity is. So they always test to make sure that there's no waste spilling out, that the leach field is not at capacity, and that it's not at a place where it's going to fail. So once that's came in place with the Oroville when the spillway was in trouble.
Yeah.
That's everybody got fined because of the excessive flows, which is kind of crazy. You can't control nature, but
Yeah.
that's one of the ways the state makes money. So every 5 years, there's that study they have to do when they check the soil, and anytime there's excessive rain flows, they have to check and make sure there's no leakage. And that's one of the things we talk about with transparency, where I'm the treasurer, so I signed a check. So I'm signing these checks, and I'm asking, what's this study for? And it was all these studies that was done in January and February, which was never presented at a general meeting and never presented to the board. So these are the things we gotta keep on them for.
So let's see if we can speed through just the notes of the summary of what happened at the February board meeting. So Mike and I will continue to watch the budget reports, the cash balances, the monthly expenditure sheets. We'll keep an eye on any of the contracts that are awarded as well. The contract that was awarded for Olympus is to coat the Garden Valley storage tank, and apparently this tank needs to be coated. It hasn't been coated, I think, since somebody said that since it was actually put in. So this one's long overdue.
In the seventies? I remember they mentioned something like that.
So I think 1976.
But they also mentioned that the tanks that they've been doing are really clean on the inside. They can't believe how clean those tanks are
Right.
when they go to coat them. So there's not much buildup and corrosion
We don't have any minerals or a lot of sediment going in. so-
Yeah, we are. We're very blessed to have really
Yeah.
clean, good water.
We got good water here.
Yes. The granite and the Sierras is such a great filter, and Stumpy's got great water, and we get to reap all those wonderful benefits from it. The audit was accepted and filed, that LSL did. We have them under contract to do the audit for us for 2 more years. So we received and filed the audit. And I think the biggest plus that came out of our February board meeting was they signed the resolution actually freezing the increase for the treated and the irrigation rates. You know, we talked about that in January, and it was agreed upon by the board. And the general manager did not have the resolution at that time to sign. He brought it back to sign, and it was signed at the February meeting. And when I talked to him and asked him, this is a little out of your style. Usually you have all the resolutions including in the board packet. You've got them all signed and they're usually ready to go. Why didn't you have this one? And he said to me, well, I thought you might change your mind. And I said, not hardly. So we did sign it in February, and it is freezing those rate increases for not more than 12 months.
Starting when?
January.
It was made retroactive back to January
Of this year.
of this year, yes, this year.
So the bills we recently got are up the old rates, I didn't check.
Yes.
At the 2018.
At the 2018 rate, and that's what they should be, and that's what they should be for the next, 11 months.
Well done on that, by the way.
Well, it takes a community, and I'll tell you, Mike and I couldn't do this without you guys. Again, we thank you, and we thank the entire community for being behind us and letting the board members know and the general manager and his staff know that, we do work for you. You pay their salaries, and which pays us our stipend as well. So again, it takes all of us to make these changes, and they're slow in coming, but it is progress, and this progress is to be celebrated. Then I just made a note of, I'm going to start making notes of what was received at each of the board meetings for the permanent record, because Mike and I are realizing that when we make requests to get items on the agenda and it goes ignored, and month after month we don't see our requested items show up on the agenda, we're starting to just make notes of those and turn those in with every meeting so that it's part of the permanent record. And we do have as one of the handouts the answers from the general managers, answers to your questions from the January town hall, so those are made available. And all this information too, we'll put up on Facebook and we'll put up on our YouTube channel, so it'll always be out, in public's eye if you want to share it. If you don't have the handouts later and you're talking to your friends or your neighbors, you meet them at the post office or at the market, and you want to share information with them, just share the YouTube channel with them and let them know that they can go to the Water Community Town Hall YouTube channel, and we're posting all the videos and a lot of information there. A lot of information is posted on our Facebook pages.
So I'll just go over some of the board reports as it'll come back to play later on. So I talked about the first set of hearings that they had for the water bill, that the $1 tax that they were planning, and I was talking about the hearings in the board report. Then after I made my report, Dane chimed in that CSDA was talking about it, and that was the only time it was mentioned in a meeting. The other thing I talked about was that was the same week when Dane had in the Georgetown Gazette the message from the board president, and I let him know that when it says message from the board president, it's actually reflective of the entire board. So if you have a position that you disagree with from the board, you should not have the title be message from the board president, because I mean, we were just at a CSBA meeting and that said, you know, once the board makes a decision, even if you're in disagreement with it, it's the board's position because you're a collective, you're a team, so. And then there was the response back to that, so I said, anytime that happens, someone's gonna feel the need to respond back, and that was a Facebook post, then the GM decided to respond to that. So I just mentioned this is how this whole thing can occur. And then I also mentioned, even if you respond back, you probably should put someone's Facebook post in the agenda minutes for a board meeting. That didn't make sense. The other thing we talked about was they did add another change contract to the next gen. And at that time, I tried to pin down about exactly how much more time was needed, how much did they think they would expend, because we know there's $2 million left in the actual budget. We're at 10 million, so we don't want to keep going towards that extra 2 million there with like 3 months left where we keep getting change orders. So we're really trying to make sure that we're not spending on things that we don't need or isn't needed, or just money's just with really trying to keep our budget down. So that was one thing we looked at. And then the other thing was there was a bunch of RFPs that were done and they were never presented at the board meeting as well. And that was the other thing I said, this kind of needs to be presented. We need to know when there's an item that's going out for bid, so we can alert the public to go to it, and so we can be able to go see what's going on, because, I mean, it was done right after our board meeting and no one mentioned it, so these are the things we just keep trying to let them know. And at that time, the things we put on was, we requested for an inactive meter policy, because people are still paying for no service, and we asked for a finance committee resolution, because initially they had removed us from the board, we both had resigned already, so we wanted to change that language and try to fix the way that the finance committee was, applicants were being selected and interviewed, and we might have been able to get a process beforehand, but that didn't come up, and we saw what happened at the next meeting, so.
Yes, so we'll move on to the page 2 of 4 of the handout. That's the agenda. Let's talk real quickly about the summary of the March board meeting. The biggest thing that came out of that, which I think the community will be thankful for, is we settled the Liao case. The board decided that we would settle the lawsuit against the district that had been going on for quite a while for the Kaiser Siphon pipeline. And this was a very expensive lawsuit that could have originally been settled years ago for $30,000. But I think we're up to, Sheree, what'd you calculate? $700,000 we've spent fighting this lawsuit for about 10 years.
Is that just litigation fees?
Yes, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth for years. And
For 30K?
the board, 5 of us got together and said, you know, let's just cut our losses here. This is ridiculous. We can't afford this right now.
What a waste.
So
So
that was our $700,000.
Yeah. Yep.
Settle at 30K.
Have
and
you disclosed how the vote went on that? Are you allowed to disclose who voted yea or nay?
we certainly can.
I don't know if you can, it was closed session, so.
Oh,
Oh, you can. Oh, okay. Yes, right. We can't with closed session. No, I'm sorry, Mike. We can't.
Okay.
We can't. And then the next best thing, I think, to help our district in quite a while is we've had a very awesome young man step up, Adam Harston. For those of you that know Keith, his father, who's the chiropractor up in Georgetown, Adam is a certified financial forensic, and he's a CPA. And he's working in those capacities now for his full-time job, and he had offered to take a look at the 218 information that was publicly available, and he did, and his findings are a 4-page handout that he presented to the board during the public comment period. And I've asked for the audio file, and I got that and cleaned that up and sent that to him and asked him if we could post that as well. And he's thinking about that, and hopefully he will come by this afternoon and you'll get a chance to meet him. But I would encourage all of you to read his handout that I provided today and get in touch with him if you have any questions. But he did want me to make note that he did want a disclaimer on here. So he did want people to understand that these are observational findings and it's not an official report. He had access to all the documents and information to put together some of his findings, but it's not all inclusive. There's still quite a bit of documents that people have asked for in the past that we have not gotten yet, that we were not able to provide to him. And so his report is not as complete as he would like to have it because he feels that there's information missing. So, but he did want you guys to know that he is working on this. He's not charging for this. This preliminary work that he did it because he lives in this community. He's been in this community for a long time. He's raising his family here, and like all of us, he cares about our community and he cares about the water. Yes, sir.
You've mentioned a couple of times about trying to get information, and you're not saying who from, and that there seems to be some resistance or.
Yes, we have asked for public records requests, what we call PRAs, from the water district for certain information, and sometimes the information is provided to us, but it's not complete. We still have questions and we ask for more, and we've gotten some PRAs that have been answered rather quickly, and then we've had some PRAs that have been taken 10, 15, 30 days, and we still haven't gotten information.
Kind of like Congress and DOJ?
Yes, yes, and for the water district's behalf, there is a lawsuit going on, so there, you know, the legal may have advised them that they can't let some of those records go, but they should be public records. The information that we're requesting should be public records. So, let's see, where are we? GM Strategic Planning Workshop meeting minutes. Unfortunately, for the strategic planning workshop, I recorded that audio of that meeting and I put that up on our YouTube channel, so that's been available. Our water district unfortunately did not take any meeting minutes for that agendized meeting and didn't record the meeting. So we're waiting on the general manager to put together his meeting minutes and put those up on the website. Again, a statement of cash balances, we're watching Fund 10 and Fund 40. Mike and I noticed in this March monthly board meetings packet that Fund 40 was a $2,000 difference. It was $2,000 short, and the Fund 40 was $2,000 more. So when we questioned that, what mistake had happened is they took the $400 per board member times 5, or $2,000, and they charged it to Fund 40, which is the wastewater zone. So that's why Mike and I are watching the accounting. That's why we are pushing to get the finance committee topic on the agenda so that we can talk about rebuilding a capable finance committee and changing the resolution so that the finance committee will work at the direction of the board, which it should. Not
Cynthia, really, seriously, somebody who would do something like that, person's not qualified in their job.
right.
Why is that person not terminated? If this was done in the private sector, they would be terminated. Because this is not just the first time, but this is the problem. You know, this is years of this problem that has gotten us where we are right now. But seriously, somebody could do that. And I'm not saying it's malicious at this point, because I do know some things are punitive if they do. But seriously, somebody who does that on their job, they should be terminated.
Well, or at least Stacy trained. They should.
Terminated at this point. They're paid more than what they should be for their training.
Yes.
So they should be terminated. We already know that there is such a disrespect of our community by this staff that if they don't like it, somebody else can do the job, probably would do it better, and they can find another job. They obviously don't like it, but seriously, stupidity reigns when you take $200 for a board director's meeting, you take it out of a Fund 40. That's just stupid.
My personal opinion, I think what they're doing, Stacy, is I think they're trying to spend down that $1 million.
Yes.
So
There it is.
that they don't have to give it back to the customers.
Yes.
Ratepayers, yeah, I know that, and I really know because they have this history, this type of reputation. But still, again, I go to my comment about the fact somebody to do that. All right, maybe give them one warning, they do it again, and they're terminated.
I agree, Stacy, and I hear what you're saying. There's been a particular situation where the water district has a contract with VDT, and VDT has been providing financial support and services for quite a while. They have been training our management analyst, and the contract with VDT now has almost been exhausted up to the budget amount, so they've cut back their hours. So now a budget analyst or management analyst is on her own now. She's received enough training over the year, now she's on her own.
How many
So
hours
if
of
it,
training has she had?
quite a few,
Okay, at our expense?
yes,
And she still does this?
yes, and so this
Okay,
could
that
have
tells
been
me
just a
that the
simple
training's
oversight,
not working, or the person's not working.
right?
That's the way they train.
And so a year time to try to teach her how to do it and she's not doing it
Right.
needs to be terminated. I would not let somebody run my business who was making mistakes, financial mistakes like that.
Mhm.
That's just gonna put me in the hole.
And there could be oversight, and you would hope that the budgets and the package information and the cash balances, when they're prepared, are overseen by the general manager before they're put in the board packet.
Absolutely, he
So-
is the one who's actually got his fingerprint on that.
Right, so this slipped through, Mike and I caught it.
But the thing is great, you're there and catching it, it never should have happened, especially like I said, like a year's worth of BDT training that we paid for, and she's still not doing her job right.
Well, and hopefully, since we brought it to their attention and they corrected it's now been publicly brought to her attention during a board meeting. Hopefully she'll scrutinize the work, and so will the general manager a little more closely. It won't happen again.
But since she works for me, for us, I want to do her review. I'm serious. The ratepayer pays her salary.
Right?
We have the right to say, you're not doing a very good job.
And you could certainly do that by writing a letter to the general manager and sending calling him or sending him an email.
Okay.
And letting him
Make a
know.
paper trail.
Well, what we really need is a campaign of that so that the community as a whole is saying, together, saying, we're not okay with this anymore. It's done, it's over,
Right.
this has gotta stop.
Right.
Put him in the same boat.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I'm saying, put him in the same boat, I'm
As far
saying
as
this is.
responsibility.
Well, the responsibility, I said, what I'm saying is, you're gonna be held accountable for your job now. And if you don't, find another job. I'm not paying your salary anymore.
Karen, I think.
I wanna know why we have all this overage in this Auburn Lake Trail Fund, why they don't refund it back and then cut down the expenses from the months this forward. They have no right to keep their money.
That's correct, and that's exactly the way Mike
And
and I
they're trying
feel,
to
and
figure
that's.
out ways to get rid of it, which is not okay.
It's a long
Well, that's what we were
interest.
talking about in January, when we had the town hall. I thought we were there to discuss how we, divvy back up the money.
Yeah, they need
But
to
that
do
wasn't
that.
it at all. That was just them
They
saying,
don't wanna
okay,
do it.
well, of course they don't. They want to keep the money. But actually, they're gonna get another class action lawsuit. And this time, really, the class action lawsuit ought to be against the staff, not the utility, because that's gonna hurt us, but against the staff, the management, and the prior BODs that did this. That's where the lawsuit needs to go.
Who handles HR for the staff? The board?
Yeah, that's interesting.
General manager.
They actually have an HR position. Stephanie Beck is in the HR position there at the water district,
But who oversees that position?
the general manager.
And who oversees him?
The board.
So the board, the only employee that the board has is the general manager, and the general manager runs the staff and everybody else.
But as a community, we need to bombard them with a letter campaign of some sort saying, it is not okay to continue to do this. Either your staff gets up to speed with the hundreds of thousands of dollars we've paid them to be trained and do their job, or find another one.
Yeah. Jerry,
Steve?
go Jerry and Steve.
Jerry?
Well, I just wanted, I mean, to your, I understand, the frustration in that. When you say just fire somebody, there has to be steps.
I am in an industry where liability is a big thing. I can't have an employee make one mistake.
I get it, I get that.
I can get sued
It's private.
millions of dollars.
I just wanna make the comment that then you start over with that exorbitant training amount. And so I don't know where the discipline, the documentation of a discipline that at least takes it one step further. I understand the impatience with all of this, but the documentation of a disciplinary, and then whether it be specific to this, if it's in another area, if it's in, I don't know, is there something that has, is there guidelines to disciplinary actions against paid staff that continue to not?
If there's an HR program, they are required by state law, because GDPUD takes state money. They have to abide every state law. State law requires HR with documented aspects of
Okay,
that.
so to me, it seems important, as maybe as frustrating as it may be, it was even just the first step to at least document a disciplinary, because that's a huge thing. And then there has to be this trail that unfortunately has to be documented. You have to go through steps. And so I don't know what that is, what that plan or that path is, but how does one go about requesting that this be a documented disciplinary action for this person, that as it accumulates, then you've got no choice but to fire them and then to pay for expensive training for another person again. Who's to not say you're still gonna not end up with somebody that isn't perfect, but what I'm saying is that unfortunately there's still the steps, right?
Correct, and the general manager does provide, he does provide annual reviews of his staff where they are, they are discussed with them, their achievements for the year and some training that they may need. So he is doing those reviews annually.
So are you saying that he's the one who says you failed on this and this gives you a low review, or can we as?
That's just a fox guarding the hen.
That's what I'm saying, who is to say, I want this as a documented mistake, whatever the intention, mistake, unintentional, whatever, intentional, to be documented. Who gets to say that, so that it starts a checklist on staff?
Do we send a letter to Stephanie saying, hey, I want her written up because of what she did with Fund 40?
And does the GM say no?
I
Can
would
we say no to that?
I would recommend that you actually call the general manager and speak to him about this. It's his staff that's responsible, for putting together the reports and putting together the IT policies. And he's got it on his work agenda in his board report for the March board meeting, that he was going to be working on policies coming up in March and April. So he's going to be addressing some of the policies.
Technically, HR is the one who's supposed to have the official document where they're written up, they have to sign it, and it's not supposed to happen again.
Yes, and remember, these are personnel matters, so they're not going to be publicly available.
Correct.
They're going to be
Actually,
internal.
public employee, ARFO, you can get them. Just like I can get it on any copy. These are public employees. You go to Secretary of State's, Secretary of State's website. I can get their salaries, I can get their social security numbers, I can get anything.
Okay. I imagine that you might have a difference of opinion with this general manager, because he has let us know that, if it's sensitive or confidential information, it's not going to be shared.
Well, he's been telling everybody that for a long time. People just don't know.
Okay. Steve?
I think she's next.
I think the problem that I think we're having is that, and this is just my opinion, the general manager has his pet projects and his pet employees, and he's probably encouraging them to do some of his pet projects, and he's covering for them. And it is his responsibility to deal with these employees, and if he doesn't want to, he's not going to, and it's not, the board can't direct him to do any one particular thing. The board could fire him, but to do that, if he doesn't get his act together and start doing what's best for the community, it takes 3 votes to do something like that, so.
Well, I realize that, and I realize we're in a 2-year waiting period until we can do another election to get the other 3
Or,
votes.
not necessarily, we've got, in my opinion, this is just my opinion again, we've got at least 1 board member who's a swing vote. And I think if Dave Souza was starting to get some phone calls from the community about different issues, I think I went to the last board meeting, and when this young man, Adam, Harston spoke, I saw Dave Souza sit up and listen. And I thought that was a really good sign, so now I think he needs to be a little bit bombarded by the public, both if you see him on the street or give him a call.
Well,
Because if we could get
specifically about this
another,
one action I'm talking about is as a community, in order to get what we need to have happen as ratepayers with our utility company, I think everybody should send an email to the GM, copy every board member, and say, we don't agree with
yes,
this,
I agree with that.
and we don't find it professional, we find her lacking in training, and she's already been trained, and that steps, the disciplinary action should be taken. Because any more of these, you know, I mean, like I said, it's been going on for years, so that's why we've got this problem. We really need to clean the slate and just get things in a professional manner.
Steve?
Well, what are they teaching them at this training that's been going on and some
They've probably
of
been
that
doing the work,
wrong?
that this would probably been doing the work.
Yeah.
That's typically what I've seen with consulting situations like that.
And I would
I've gone
definitely
into
keep
businesses and we've ended up just doing the work because the staff is just not gonna do it, or the staff isn't talented enough to do it.
Okay, Steve?
Couple of things. Anytime that you're going to communicate with GDPUD, my recommendation would be you send it directly to the general manager and to the president of the board, and CC everybody on the board, and CC everybody out in the world that you know. Because, you know, it's like one voice in the wilderness goes to the general manager, and he gives you all the platitudes, and as soon as he hangs up, he goes, forget that.
Yeah.
Okay, if everybody knows, then everybody all of a sudden is brought into the solution, and if they don't solve the problem, it's egg on their face. If they don't know because the general manager doesn't share it with anybody, then it just disappears. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I would highly recommend that the board basically take a look at the quantity of the money that was in Fund 40 on January 1st and freeze it. You know, right now it's a general fund with no restrictions, and anybody can go in and spend money out of that fund whenever they want. So I would say, take that number and basically freeze that fund and say, this is money that we overcharged a certain number of customers here, and you can't be drawing off of that. It's not your money, it's theirs. And the previous president actually described it as an ALT bank account. Well, nobody gets into my bank account but me. You know, so the current GDPUD board, the current GDPUD staff has no right to get into my bank account. Okay, that's number two. Number three, I would encourage all of you here to be available to bring things to the board instead of having two board members who are obviously proponents of the public constantly doing it, because what it ends up doing is it separates the two people that are bringing the issues from the three people who don't want to deal with it.
The
Okay?
problem with that is we can't get the other three to show up in situations like this.
But I'm saying, we need all you folks and all your friends to start sending that stuff to, like I said, the president, the general manager directly, CC all the board members, and then send copies, and down the bottom, I put CC the district. And put it out to everybody you know, so that everybody starts becoming aware of what's going on, because what we have in our, we're an oblivious society, let's face it.
Yep.
And bottom line, if you're not paying attention, or if you just can't build an interest, people in these kinds of districts, people in our governments, everybody along the line says, well, nobody's paying attention, we can do whatever we want.
Yep.
Okay, so we all have to be involved, and we all have to encourage our friends and neighbors to, if not be involved, they need to at least be aware. So feel free to share the information that you send in, feel free to share the responses you get back with all your neighbors, good or bad, it's okay. And I will tell you that the people who submitted for the finance committee, two members of the board, one of whom was the president of the board, and the other one was Mr. Souza, basically kind of showed their colors by voting for probably two people that were totally unqualified over 3 people that were fairly qualified,
Yes.
okay? And bottom line, the 2 most qualified, unfortunately, one of them's me, so I apologize for blowing my own horn, were basically, the president went up there and didn't vote for either one of them.
They don't want someone qualified on the
Right.
board.
And, you know, and Souza kind of followed suit. So I would just encourage you, I mean, you're being involved right now, don't walk away and be all, you know, kicking rocks as you go down the street. You've got to get your neighbors involved, you've got to get your friends involved, you've got to share what information you have with them, and you've got to encourage them to go and seek retribution for whatever the problem is in the district. So that's all I can tell you.
Is there an email chain of this community or even an alt?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there is some type of email chain that we could use in which to send these emails.
All of the board members and the general manager's emails are posted on the Water District's
I'm
website.
talking about other people who attend some of the meetings and.
Yes, in fact, I didn't set it over wide, but I have a sheet here that I'd like to, if anybody wants to put their emails on our list that Mike is compiling. Mike is very good about sending out through MailChimp emails about the town hall meetings and what's going on and things like that. So we have started collecting emails, and you're welcome to add your name to this list if you'd like to be continue informed about the town hall meetings.
Okay.
Yeah, Mike?
Last time they did the finance committee members, they upped the size of the committee from 5 to 7 because so many people had interest. Why can't they go from 7 to 9 since so many more people have interest? That way, you know, the 2 people that they seem to be wanting in there will get in there along with the qualified people, and it allows room for Adam.
Correct, they could do that, Mike, the board could do that, and that's why Mike and I are pushing to get that finance committee topic on the agenda. Because not only do we need to talk about, obviously, an appointment process, since that was a fiasco, an absolute embarrassing fiasco at the March board meeting. But we need to talk about roles and responsibility, volunteerism. We need to make sure that the resolution is revised, and during the revision of a resolution, it could be the positions could be up to 9, they could be up to 11 if we wanted to, if we had that much interest. Or it could drop back down to 5. It can be adjusted is the point. So
Well,
yes, that can be done.
That's what they did the last time. You know, they had so many people, they said, okay, we're just gonna raise it up. And it was a piece of cake.
Right. It could be done again. It could be done again. But it's not gonna be done if we can't convince the board president to lax up a bit and start putting some of the agenda items that Mike and I have been asking since December to put on the next board meeting agenda. Until he actually does that, he controls the narrative. He controls the dialogue, he controls the agenda. And it's frustrating because when you talk to any other board around here, Parks District, School District, Fire District, they don't do this. Board member wants something on the agenda, it's on the agenda.
Why
And
does he think he can do it?
because in the current policy right now that we have for the board president, there's 18 roles and responsibilities he's responsible for. Number 16 says, coordinate the agenda with the general manager. So I asked at the last board meeting, what's the definition of coordinate? Does it mean keep things off? Does it mean put everything on? What does it mean? I didn't get an answer. I was just told if I want something on the agenda, I have to do what I've been doing, Mike has to do what he's been doing, and that's email it to the general manager, email it to the board president. I CC the other board members on the BCC, just to let them know, this is some information I want you to be aware of. And I've been told by the general manager that's a Brown Act violation, and that is not true. It is not a Brown Act violation for me to provide procedural information or a public information to the other board members. I'm not talking business, I'm not talking anything substantive. So it's not a Brown Act violation. So I disagree with them, and I'm gonna continue to put information out there to the other board members by BCC and to the president and to the general manager as a CC and to the president, and let them know, hey, you need to know about this. This is going on, and this is a discussion I've had with the president or the general manager. Mike, or sorry, Steve?
I apologize, I had a previous commitment, but if you all have a pencil handy,
Yeah.
write down my email. You're always welcome to email me if you've got any questions, but if I don't know, I'll just say I haven't got a clue. I'll see if I can find out for you. But the email is CANCAPTAIN, CANCAPTAIN. And I will tell you this because destroyers are known as cans, and I was a captain of a destroyer, not because I spent a lot of time in the bathroom. Okay.
That was
And that's at Comcast.net.
At where?
Comcast.net. And you're all welcome to email me. I check it once or twice a day. I will respond to you with an answer, a lack of answer, and a commitment to see if I can find something out for you. And I'm just happy to do that because I want to be as involved in this community as I think we should be.
What's your name again? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
Steve Miller.
Steve Miller, like the band.
Thank you, Steve. And And for those of you, if you would like to do us a favor too, that you can get in touch with the general manager and the board president and your other board members and really encourage them to put qualified, capable people on the finance committee, Steve Miller being one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing, I have another commitment too, but from the correspondence I've received from the general manager, now that I am on the committee, they're looking for more qualified candidates. They're really not. They're looking for less qualified candidates than the two that are not on yet, so that they can't find out the kinds of things that Mike and Cindy just found out on this. I see it.
And then there's the one that's on there now, it's been on there for a while, it was in that same category, I feel.
Or it's only attended one meeting in the last year.
That Ken?
I think so. I haven't even been to a meeting
Yeah.
yet. So,
I'm talking to about the other one.
so anyway, that's in essence,
That one.
eventually, it'll all be exposed. Things will, it's just gonna take time, and that's what Steve and Mike and Cindy did when I just wanted to say that they didn't make a promise to lower the rates, right? They were being pushed to, but they couldn't, because then they would be guilty of making a commitment for something they do nothing about. They want the transparency and the clarity and the ability to be able to see what's a justifiable increase based on the data. And now they're trying to get the data, which I'm gonna be a part of trying to dig it out, so that we can see what's realistic, and then we'll all be able to buy into it once we develop some trust. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So they froze it, they stopped the bleeding, while this year we're trying to accumulate this ability to do our job.
Right, well, we've only got 12 months before they raise it again.
9, I think.
9, yeah.
Yeah, well, they'll hold it till December, but if Adam can take a look and produce a 4-page preliminary report of findings in 2 weeks at no cost, there's no reason why we need to hire an engineering firm to produce the same type of rate study we have now that we know is inflated, that we know is inaccurate, and they're saying it's gonna cost us $100,000 to do another 218. So we can cut our costs and we can do things differently. It's just gonna take those of us who are willing to think outside the box to do it. And thank you, Mitch.
Who's they? They raised the rate. Who is they?
The Water District?
The GM and the 3 board members that are there, they're not here.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm just
Carolyn?
trying to understand the relationship.
Is it possible that GPUD could decide to dissolve the finance committee?
It would take the board to do it. It's a board-appointed committee. It's a standing committee of the board. So the board could decide to do that. I don't think that's likely, and I don't think that's gonna happen. I certainly would not vote for that. I would be in favor of anything, of making sure that we fill the vacancies and fill them with people that are very capable, and then they start looking at things. We've been in a current situation, and we'll get to it on the agenda, where the general manager and the board president who put the agenda together had a mid-year budget report. Mid-year budget report? It was mid-year budget.
review.
Yeah, the mid-year budget review was on the consent calendar. The consent calendar is an area on the agenda that is meant to just basically, you already are aware of the item on the agenda, and it basically is just gonna go along through and get pushed through and attended to, the business on that agenda item attended to quickly without any controversy. So he has the mid-year budget review on the consent calendar when the finance committee has not seen it, the board has not seen it. And we're like, wait a minute, how can we review and accept this when we haven't reviewed it yet? That should have been gone to the finance committee. The first quarter, the second quarter, the mid-year compared to the budget. When we started looking at things, Mike and I were on the phone with another community member who was very concerned about this, brought it to our attention and said, did you know if you look at the first quarter, it doesn't match up to the budget? And then if you look at it the second quarter, it doesn't match up to the budget? And you put everything in line and you look at it, nothing adds up. We need the finance committee to start looking at and even developing the budgets. Because we have a general manager who is self-professed to say, I'm not a finance guy. If he's not a finance guy, why is he developing the budget? It needs to be done by capable, qualified people, more than one, like a finance committee of 5 or 7 or 9 or 11 members who have the background and the credentials and the experience and the knowledge and skills and abilities in finance and management and budgeting and accounting that can develop for the good of the community a reasonable rate study, a reasonable budget, a reasonable cost of service. And that information should then be reviewed by the finance committee, polished and fine-tuned, and then sent to the board, and the board should look at it, and the board should direct the general manager to either adopt it or have it revised by the finance committee. Now his staff and he can support the finance committee, but somebody who says, I'm not a finance guy, makes me really nervous if he's developing our budgets and nothing matches. So Mike and I will look more into this in more in detail, but we're really glad that we've got community members that are engaged to point these things out. If you guys see anything like this or hear anything like this, please bring it forward. I mean, you're obviously interested because you're here today. Karen?
This is kind of off the subject, but I'm just wondering, can we put any pressure to get our 2,000 cubic feet of water back so people can water their lawns so we don't have such a drought situation? He says because of 218 it can't be done, but I don't believe that's true.
Well, they're calling it a tiered rate. They're calling it a tiered rate. And I don't know enough about tiered
Well,
rates.
they had tiered rates after the 2,000 cubic feet. It was went into tiers. But they've taken away our water allotment and people, it's costing them so much, we're drying up here.
Right. And the other, I don't want to call it an excuse because I don't know enough about it to know whether it's an excuse or not, but the other remark that I've heard back from the general manager is it wouldn't be treating everybody fairly because the irrigation folks don't get that, so.
It doesn't have anything to do with irrigation. He
Okay.
keeps saying that some people that are one person that just uses a little bit of water
Right.
pay the same as a person that uses 2,000 cubic feet of water. Well, they're still paying the same. Now the people that use the least amount are still paying more because they're being charged for every gallon used.
That's true, and the large water users
That's
do
just
get a
the
break.
excuse that they make.
Right.
But
Right. Keep bringing it up. Bring it
I'm gonna
forward.
bring it up every time.
Yes.
Because you know what, we're gonna end up like paradise if we don't do something about it.
Right. That's what we're all concerned about, that's for sure.
It's
All
time
right.
for the general manager to be concerned about it. We're throwing all this water down the river into the ocean when people could be using it to keep themselves safe.
Right.
And we're out of the drought, so there's no reason why we can't have our water back.
He'll be a GM and doesn't live in the area.
He doesn't?
What?
Where does he live?
Newcastle.
Where?
Oh,
He lives in Plastic County.
which I think is another reason why he's so disrespectful to us.
There's only 2 people in the office that I believe work, or live in Georgetown.
Okay.
So anyway.
Well, the rest of the meeting, I put some information in about the general manager's report and the operations manager's report, and then Adam, the water quality manager's report. He talked about the ALT zone. I just want to bring to your attention that, as Mike previously mentioned, they did have a 27,200 gallon overflow, and it was apparently it was a spillage, and the authorities were notified. So I asked Adam if we're expecting fines out of that, and that's yet to be determined. Hopefully, if they are going to fine us, they'll go easy on us because we did have quite a bit of rain, and our system, the system down there, it just exceeded capacity.
Is that why it overflowed, is it exceeded capacity?
Well, they had a release at, they said Station 16, and so, Stacy, I don't know what Station 16 is, and I honestly don't know the answer to that, but we can certainly find the answer to that.
I'd like to know if there was a problem, why don't they tell it, what was the problem? And usually, most water districts will list on their website, you can go to their website and say, oh, they would tell us what Station 16 is, and what the problem was, how it was fixed, how many people responded, what the costs were, things of that nature.
In the past, it was excess water, rainwater, and then the manholes got over full, and so it could have been something with that.
Right,
But we
well,
don't
we're
know.
guessing, we don't know. You know, I wanna know, okay, if that was the case, why wasn't somebody monitoring, knowing that it has a history of doing that?
Right.
And how long did it take them to respond, do something about it?
Well, Stacy, you bring up a good point. I wonder if those stations, those check stations around that area are gauged. If they're gauged, then that's easy. Put triple alarms on them and your pager or your phone goes off.
Employees out there, whether they do anything or not, but it sounds like they probably do have the equipment.
I can certainly
They don't tell
ask.
us about it.
Okay, I'll ask if they're gauged or alarmed.
Yeah,
Okay,
they have to have some type of signal on them. Or at least in other utility companies I've worked with, that's what's happened.
yeah, you would
We
think.
have monitoring devices on everything, at
Okay.
every hub,
Okay.
so.
Can Adam be part of the 5 to 11 committee members that you were talking about?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Can Adam be part of the, that
The
committee?
finance committee?
Yeah,
Yes, anybody can be a part of the finance committee. All they need to do is to prepare a cover letter and their resume and send that into the board president and the general manager. And I agree with Steve Miller's suggestion. I would CC all the board members so that we see that information as well.
Would Adam be, I mean, he sounds like a person that would be nice to capture.
Yes, yes,
Is he
yes.
interested?
Yes, he is interested. Yes.
So after that, then the general manager and the president, board president, says, we're gonna add more? I mean, what's the next steps after that, that people can follow up on? I mean, because everything ends up in either a good result or a bad result, or it just evaporates and goes away. So what if someone, Adam, says, and he puts forth that, what does the general manager and the board president do with that information?
Hopefully, the next step is they'll bring the applicants back for us to vote on again to add to the finance committee at the next meeting. But we
And that's
know,
the April board meeting.
that'll be the April board meeting.
And so it has to get on the agenda
Yes,
to vote for this individual.
yes.
Individuals,
added.
because anybody that's still in, we have a rolling application pool, so anybody that still has an application is still eligible. At least that's my belief on it.
And Jerry, currently there's 2 vacancies to be filled. There were 3, Mitch filled 1, now there's 2 left to be filled.
So what's the standard number on this finance committee?
Currently, right now, the current resolution says 7.
So,
Correct. And we do have 2 vacancies, but we also have a president who's been there for 6 years and he wants to retire. And then we have a person who has not shown up for 12 months. So that could create 2 more vacancies. We could end up, if we can get this item on the agenda and discuss it and decide to remove the person who has not been there in 12 months, that we would create 3 vacancies, which would make room for.
and this is just the finance committee?
Yes, just the finance committee. That would make room for 3 more. So,
And to get something on the agenda, would it help if a group were to say, we'd like this on the agenda? I mean,
it
sounds
can't
like
hurt. It can't hurt, and these are open public meetings, and there is a public consent portion in the meeting up front so that the community can talk to the board. So yes, it can't hurt. We'd encourage you to do that.
You can email the board and the president for items that you would like to see on the agenda. Christie?
Is there already some kind of a guideline as to how many meetings can be missed by a finance committee member? There isn't.
That's why we need to revise the
And there's
resolution.
another member that I'm not gonna mention by name, but is there a record of that person's attendance? Has that person missed a lot of meetings as well?
Yeah, she has.
Okay, Sierra. Has she missed a lot of
Just say
meetings?
she.
That's true, she's the only one.
Well, she currently has school right now too, so but I don't know. So if she's missing meetings, it might be because of her school schedule. But,
Then she shouldn't be on the board.
So is
then the
that
board president
completely
would, or excuse me, not the board
volunteer,
president,
the
the
finance?
finance committee
Yes, it's
president.
It's volunteer, it's not a
Correct.
stipend that they
No.
get paid
Correct,
if
it's
they
volunteer.
show up or not. It's a complete volunteer.
Correct.
But then it comes down to whether they're just filling a seat that's not
If
helping
we have,
anybody,
if we have
or,
more people that are interested in, there are seats that can be filled then.
Correct, and
Or
it is a
qualified
two-year
people
commitment
that are-
on the finance committee.
and you're not limited to 7, but right now it's at 7, so you would have to
We'd have to
change
change their
that
resolution.
by a board.
Correct.
Resolution.
Correct, it'd have to be,
To make that a larger number so that we're always effective.
correct.
Sarah?
I'm going to ask a follow-up question to Christie's question. Do you guys have a process by which every year or whatever, you review the rules that your committee is working under, and you can make a resolution or something that a person can miss, 2 times within a 12-month period? Or because I mean, I sit on a lot of volunteer boards, and we have rules. We're not getting
It's
paid,
usually
but
3 meetings in a row is usually what most of the volunteer
Yeah.
committees have.
But that obviously isn't a rule here because somebody's missed 12 and they're still on the board.
Correct, correct.
So there's no rules for the Senate, the finance committee.
If there are, they have not been brought forward, and we don't know what they are, with the exception of the resolution that we're going by now. And it's a good point both of you are bringing up. Is policies and procedures in this district are few and far between. There's a lot of them that we've asked for, we haven't seen. There's a lot that we know that need to be reviewed. The general manager is aware that quite a few need to be reviewed and updated. And Sarah, to your point, an annual review is never a bad thing. Policy and procedures, it's never a bad thing to get them out, dust them off, and review them annually with a steering committee. And bring back recommendations for revisions on an annual basis. That would get us from a reactive to a proactive mode, which is where we would like this district to be eventually.
If we don't have a steering
I
committee
asked
right now.
that to be on the agenda also at this meeting. so-
Yeah, we would still have to petition to put it onto the agenda.
Yep.
But is there a steering committee at GDPUD at all?
No.
No, not right now.
Do you have another question, Christie?
I was going to speak to the number of meetings per year that is called for by the finance committee, and the fact that so many of them did not occur historically, and where that sort of stands. They're meeting monthly pretty much now, is my understanding. but
Well,
they're only
so
required
I was
once a quarter.
on, when I was on the finance committee, let's see, we had the February meeting, March meeting, April meeting. There was a combined one in May, then I believe June was canceled. We were canceled from June to probably September. And then we had an October Halloween meeting, and I reminded him it was Halloween. And then that was it, I believe. Then we had the next
If you
meeting in
look on the
January
website,
where
Finance committee meeting minutes, because I went down to download them for the past year, there's only two months that it says they met.
Yep, and we've met more than that, so because I was the secretary, and I'm still the acting secretary of the finance committee, so there's more minutes than that, they still haven't made it onto the site, so.
Generally, the finance committee will meet a week after the board meeting, right? Week after, yeah, week after. And I noticed that there was an email that went out, said that next week's board meetings or finance committee meetings already canceled.
They want to
Already
reschedule it.
canceled?
Yep.
They wanted to try to reschedule it.
For March 27th maybe, but
So,
let's see.
Doctor, who's responsible for posting those minutes
The
on the
The
list
administrative assistant, so.
at the office?
What some of them were there, then they rechanged the website, then they disappeared, but hopefully they will come up, so.
Okay,
Yeah, hopefully they'll repost them.
And what I did is, my last meeting, we reconfirmed all the minutes that needed to go up, so they can all go up.
yeah, okay. Management.
Okay.
All right, moving forward, some of the reports I made, which will also come into this, is both Cindy and I received scholarships to go to California Special District Association Leadership Academy, and it's for board members to teach you how to work within your board and different skill sets and things. So that's one of the things that's put on by the district. That's going to be at Napa in July, so we'll be attending that. The other thing is, as we talked about CABI, so there are 12 interregional water management geologic areas in the state of California. So CABI is ours. And in the mountain areas, there are 10. So that lets you know how big the mountain areas are in Northern California, where the other two regions are like LA and down south, Central Valley. So Proposition 1, if you remember Prop 1, that was the first water bond that passed in 2014. And they allowed $510 million for the IRWMs to manage the funding. So our area receives 1.3 million. So there was a meeting last February to determine, they ranked all the communities in our region to see what the needs were for ranking in terms of where they should designate the monies to first, because this one was set specifically for areas that were disadvantaged. So they had to try and come up with rules to kind of find out disadvantaged communities, because there's no real description other than they used to be using median incomes, and it doesn't work as well when you look at places like Beverly Hills, where the median income would meet disadvantage, but that community is nowhere near disadvantage. So they try to set that aside. So the first part of the meeting was to rank, and the second part was to decide what part of was all the specific water districts were there to decide what their specific needs were. And the one thing we discussed, Adam was there, was the main ditch was one of probably the first things that we need to take care of, because if we lose the main ditch, we lose water to the entire district. So that was the other thing that was brought up. And as we talk about policies and procedures, so on February 25th, I got a letter, as well as the other board members, that we sent out a letter to Assemblyman Bigelow on behalf of the district in support of the bill. And during that time, I found out, oh, we had a legislative liaison, and there's no resolution for that, so this is the same thing about policies and procedures, and I was told it was done by minute action, so you have to go back and read the minutes, and it's in there. But I said that's a row, a defined board row, which needs to be voted on every year, so that needs to be brought up, and I asked that to be put in the agenda.
By the entire board.
Yep, and also that in their own policy, although they disagree with me, it says the advocacy process and procedure is that they should come to the board and discuss policies, and then we decide what position we're on, and once we decide a position, then the president is authorized to send a letter to the GM on behalf of the district. So this was done without coming before the board, without talking to the board, without coming before the public. I mean, we haven't even discussed water policy, let alone specific legislations, whether we're going to be in support or opposition for them, whether we're supporting or AQUA or EDQA or any of the water regional agencies. So it kind of skipped a bunch of steps in my opinion, but they don't agree with me, and I said this needs to come up on our next agenda, because these are policies that we need to review, because if we have a policy that allows letters to go on behalf of the district, which is a governance thing, and the board of the directors is the district, and allows one member to do this action without the rest of the board, that's a problem. And if it's in conjunction with just the general manager, then the general manager is now an ad hoc board member if the two of them are deciding without any other board members. So it's kind of crossing the line between the roles of governance and management. So hopefully they will see it and bring that up.
Mike, how come the Mountain Democrat hasn't been doing much reporting on things?
Well, if you noticed, I can't speak on it, but Dawn Hodson left early, and if you can see from the last meeting, all that was reported was the Lau case. So there was lots of things that went through the meeting, and that was the only thing that was reported in the Democrat. So if you also read the Mountain Democrat and you attend the meeting, you will notice there are things that are reported that did not occur in the meeting.
Yep.
So you wonder where that information is coming from. That's all I can say about it. I have no idea. I'm like, yep, that wasn't in the meeting, so.
A couple other highlights I'd like to point out too, that Mike touched on the academy that he and I are going to. Okay, this is in Napa. It's over 3 days. They have functions that start on Sunday. So we want you to know that we want to go and learn and be better leaders of your water district, so we wanna take advantage of this opportunity. It's not cheap, the registration was about $600, but Mike and I are not gonna stay the night at a $200 night Embassy Suites, so we got cheap hotels for like half the cost. Yeah, exactly, we're gonna cut our expenses to the best of our abilities. I always bring my own food, so I'm not gonna charge the district for food. I have electric cars, so I'm not charging mileage, I'm not charging gas. I'm cutting expenses because I'm just glad that you guys are gonna pay just so I can go, pay my registration.
Yeah, but even with that, so we should be paying for that, and it's nominal considering what the benefit is we get out of it. Now, yes, we have people
Correct, and it's a
using
personal
that.
choice. And
Yeah.
Mike and I have even talked about carpooling, so we're trying to save the district as much money as
And that's
possible.
great, and I do know people in the past, board members in the past have really kind of, taken advantage of us with that.
Right.
But when you go there and you're actually doing something to help benefit our utility, it's worth it. $600 is not much.
Right.
I
And we'll
think
turn it back in.
$20,000 for a conference.
We'll turn it back into the community, because chances are, if you like what we're doing and you re-elect us to the board, we'll be working and doing this for quite a while.
Yeah.
And we'll keep continuing to help the community. The other thing I wanna point out,
And that's only 200 for you, because you
Yeah.
got 400 and I got 600.
oh, that's true, we did
So
get.
it's only 200.
Yeah, that's true. Mike's scholarship covered his. The CSDA gives each small water district $1,000 for the scholarships. So Mike was first in, so he got 600 and I got 400. So it's really just costing us $200. Right?
That's great.
The other thing I wanted to point out is on the mid-year budget review, again, Mike and I scrutinized this carefully. We noticed that Fund 40 revenues coming in are still 65%. Well, halfway through the year, that should be closer to 50%. So they're still overcharging those folks.
They have not changed our bill. If
Yeah.
you think that they are not overcharged, they have not
Right.
changed the bill.
Correct.
They're still
So
overcharging
even
us
though-
as of this last bill.
Correct, Stacy, but even though we've had the workshop and it's on the general manager's report that he is going to have another board workshop to discuss the ALT zone sometime in either March or April. So it'll be real interesting to see what his staff recommendations are to the board. So we'll keep an eye on
Is that
that.
a meeting that the rest of us can go to?
Yeah, it's an open board meeting,
Open board
absolutely.
meeting?
Mhm.
But why is he waiting till then to do it? Because here we go, we'll be in June before the decision is made,
Mhm.
and we're still overcharged. That $1.2 million is they'll probably be a $1.5 million.
It could, or they're gonna spend it down because they're covering labor and expenses, so who knows what it'll be at that time, but
At that meeting, can we go in and
He's-
say, look, we don't agree to your 5-year plan? I mean, seriously.
Yes.
If I don't pay my bill, I get a late charge. They haven't paid me back, I'm gonna charge them interest, fees, legal fees, anything I possibly can. They don't give me my money back.
right, and it's an open board meeting, so you're welcome to
Okay.
come, and their input is always appreciated and encouraged.
When is that meeting?
It's a regular board meeting, and they are the second Tuesday of every month at 2:00 at the Water District's main office on Main Street
Second Tuesday
of every month.
at the
Yes. The other thing I wanted to point out is because the academy in July that we're going to covers a board meeting, and Mike and I don't want to miss board meetings. They're too important to miss, and we don't want to miss one. We had made a request that they postpone the board meeting to Thursday, and we saw some head nods on the board from other board members, so they might go for that. Or if not, if it causes too much of an inconvenience, we'll just post it. I've already been in touch with the Embassy Suites. They're gonna set aside a quiet room for Mike and I. We'll post the agenda outside the door 72 hours before. Mike and I will go on, we'll get on either my phone or his phone, and we'll call in on a conference call. But we're not gonna miss a meeting.
I thought you weren't going to Embassy Suites.
Well,
No, that's where the conference
convention
is.
is.
Oh, all right.
It's actually there. Yeah.
We gotta show up to that.
I'm watching.
We know you're watching.
You know,
Karen?
on this money that's owed the Auburn Lake Trail people, you know, they could do a small claims class action a small claims court is cheap. And, you know, it might make them pop too.
Right, right. The
If I
problem
was in Auburn Lake Trails, that's probably what I would do.
I think, Karen, the problem that we have with the mindset of the staff in the water district is they don't view it as the customer's money. It's been paid in, so it's now the fiduciary responsibility of the staff and the general manager to manage that money. And so we're trying to encourage him to think about giving it back to the customers because it's their money.
That's what I'm saying, what would encourage it a little further.
Yeah, true. Okay, the other thing I wanted to point out real quickly, let's see. In the general manager's report, he talked about accounting and finance software contract. And I had asked if, before they purchase software, I want to make sure that they're looking at different types of products that will give them what they need. And in order to do that, I asked them if they were going to do what we call a proof of concept. Proof of concept simply means that you go out and you search for different applications and you ask those vendors to bring that application in and put that data, financial accounting data from the district into that software, and then you have the vendor show the staff what that software can do, what reports it can generate, what kind of tracking it can do, does it track depreciation, is it an asset management list as well, what can it really do? That's what we call a proof of concept. So I asked if that was going to be done, and apparently that's something that the general manager is going to have coming up. He's going to have a couple of meetings with vendors to come in, and those should be open in public meetings as well.
Is the POC meeting going to be available for us to attend?
It should be. I haven't seen any information on the website about those upcoming yet, but I believe that's why the general manager is trying to rearrange the date of the finance committee, get it rescheduled so that the vendors have time to come in and do that.
Yeah, because whoever got the last package really did not know what they were doing. You're supposed to be getting the source code, and you have to hold that in escrow every time. And the fact that they haven't done this, they've got a piece of crap in that office right now.
So we'll keep you posted on that, because Mike and I want to plan to attend those as well, and I welcome you to all attend it as well if you can, and ask questions during those meetings.
Software, so we should.
Okay, and let's see, one more thing. Oh, when the mid-year budget review came out, I asked if month-to-month budget projections were being done, so that when the management analyst puts out her report and she's tracking expenditures, fund balances and expenditures and labor, and then they're doing percentage compared to the annual budget. Are they also tracking those percentages and looking for projections and trends? Projections would be, are we projected at this rate of spending or at this rate of revenue? What are our projections? If it's spending, if we're spending too much, what's our projection mid-year? Are we projected to go over budget at the end of the year? That tracking is really important so you can make the necessary adjustments when you need to. And according to policy, if the general manager is going to make a budget revision, he needs to bring that before the board, do a budget revision, and there should be forms that he's filling out in there for fund transfers, so that we know, and the board knows, as our fiduciary responsibility to oversee what they're doing with the budget. So right now, the percentages are being tracked for the spending according to the budget, but none of the projections or the additional projection tracking is being done. So I'm hoping that they're looking at that into this new software that they're looking to purchase and start utilizing. Because watching for patterns and trends is very important, especially with a 50-year-old system like we have, where we know we have pipe failures and pump failures. If we can start predicting when that might happen and get those pumps and pipes on a regular maintenance schedule, we can get ourselves more to that proactive stance rather than that reactive stance.
Any utility software these days come as an SOP, a package like that will sit there and bar graph it if you want, pie chart it if you like, do all your analysis, because the data is just data back then and giving you a visual representation.
Right.
So it's a standard package. It's a standard module in any software package in utilities.
The current one we have is the Stone Age. So.
No, it doesn't do anything. Like
Yes.
I said, and the fact that they get the software to go with it, the code,
Right.
is what really stumped them.
Right. We actually are using a manufacturing software package that was written back at the turn of the century for operations. It's called MOM, Manufacturing Operations Maintenance, and it is very archaic. We do need to spend money on a financial package to get us up to speed so we can do better tracking.
Have
Yes,
you
sir.
looked at any other water districts to see if they're using?
What
Yes.
applications they're using?
Yes, I believe the general manager mentioned that in his report. He has done that.
Okay.
Yes.
Like more than one utility though?
I hope so. I hope so. The other thing I wanted to point out is in the the update from George Saunders and the ALT water treatment plant construction project that's going on. The plant is about 95% finished, and they're in testing mode right now, and they're in training mode. They're training our licensed and certified operators on the SCADA system, which are the brains to run the water treatment plant. And they're also testing each of the components throughout the new water treatment plant. One thing that happened between West Tech, the filter manufacturer, and NextGen, the contractor just overseeing the project, is that they brought water into the plant and it buckled some of the filter screens. There was some damage that was done. And it was blamed on our staff. And George said, no, our staff was not involved at that point. Your insurance needs to take care of it. So George mentioned that the filter screens had been paid for and replaced.
By who?
My question was, paid for by who? If they're in negotiations now with West Tech and NextGen to figure out who's at fault here, I want to make sure that our customers are not on the hook for paying for a mistake that was made by not our staff. So we will watch over that budget really closely, and the thing that brought to my attention that this might be an agenda item that would cover for some of those expenses was where the general manager had on the, and the president had on the agenda, the option to raise the general manager's signing authority for expenses on this project. It's currently at $150,000. And with the change orders that have come in with the plant, he's up just about to $150,000 now. And we still got change order number 9 coming in. There's been 9 so far. So 9's coming in, needs to be paid. And he wanted, there's an agenda item that was to raise his spending authority by an additional $100,000. And I questioned that. Why do you need an extra $100,000 with a plant that's 95% complete?
Yeah.
And he did say that change order number 9, which I believe was about 30.
Yeah, there's 7, 8, 9, so 8's like 2,800 and 9 like 30,000, somewhere between the two. So when that comes in, he'll be at 178,000, so he'll be over his authorization limit already.
Correct, and George Saunders mentioned that he also saw that there was going to be a need for some fencing and a retaining wall and some electrical and some valves. So he took the electrical out, but even when I questioned him about the cost of the retaining wall, the fencing, and the valves, we were looking at a total of about $60,000. And I said, then why do you need 100? I don't want the difference to pay for screens that our customers had nothing to do with, and we don't want to pay for that. So we were assured that the expenses would be only spent on what they said. Change order number 9, the fencing and the retaining wall and the valves. But in further thought, and I didn't want to keep hammering George at the meeting, but on further thought, I thought to myself, if the general manager on any given day has spending authority up to $45,000 and he wants to spend $1,500 on fencing, why does it need to be included in this particular item on the agenda? He could just go out and buy the fencing at Ace Hardware or Home Depot, wherever they have, and staff could put that in. It doesn't have to be part of the ALT, and it doesn't have to be done now as part of this change. So we're going to watch things. We watch things very closely. We're going to still ask a lot of questions. So we'll keep an eye on that too.
I actually think though that if the more eyes, like you're talking about, keep an eye on it. You and Mike are keeping great eyes on it right now. You're probably the first two that have come through that try to do this. But the community does have to buy into it also, in the fact that we need to send emails ourselves and saying, you know what, where's this 100K? What for? You know, please explain it to me, because the more eyes on it, you never want, any company doesn't want anybody peeking under the skirts. The more people who ask questions, that's when they start saying, oh, well, we didn't really need it anyway.
Correct. That's why I encourage everybody, if you can, come to the meetings and start asking questions. Yeah, Jerry?
Which, I don't want to sound paranoid, but this group, this number does need to grow as the word goes
Yes.
out and as people are.
But this is where it starts.
I know, but what my point was, I'm rah, 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 but I didn't want to put my email address down there until I know somewhere when emails go to the board or to other people that I don't wanna give my email address to, that I'm part of an undisclosed, and so that number, 39 undisclosed documented people are representing as a group this information that's going to you.
You know, Jerry, I can show you
General
really easily
manager.
how to do it.
Oh, I know how to do it, but
How
I'm
to
not the
hide
one
your
that's
email.
sending it, so
Yeah.
all I'm saying is that I didn't put mine down there. I want to be able, I don't want somebody else having my email address, that knows my email address, and I can't have a conversation with them, cause they go, ooh, she's putting that. Or, you know what I'm saying, I'm not trying to sound paranoid, I'm just
But you
saying,
need-
what's important to me is that the number, that 39 goes to 50, that 50 goes to 60, and as
But
our
we need your
voice,
email address on there to help that. And we can
only
make,
if I'm gonna be part of an undisclosed growing number. Because I want every time that we send something to the board and the GM representing this statement, that they just see the number growing. They don't need to know our email address.
what you could do is put it in an undisclosed recipient inside of Outlook. And then that way the email addresses are all hidden, and all it says on that CC part.
I'm
is,
talking about us as a group.
That's
I'm
what I'm
not
saying.
the one.
And the Divide Town Hall, the one I have, I'm the only one, well, just Cindy and I are the only ones, we don't share the emails with us, we just share people's questions and comments, and we send all the questions to the GM.
And if I wanted to send something to the GM and to everyone else, I want to be certain that it's an undisclosed. If you do, I don't want anybody that is speaking for me, even though I'm a part of this group, unless it is an undisclosed group. So it's like every single person here would have to feel that that's important,
Correct, and so Jerry, when you put your name on this list,
which I didn't
it, okay, if you do, this list goes to Michael, and Michael uses it, he keeps it confidential, he doesn't share it with anybody. It's just the list that we use for the town halls to get information back out to you.
Well, I know,
It's not used for
but there was a
anything else.
conversation earlier about, well, send it to the GM and send it to the
That would
board.
be you doing it on your own.
And then they were saying, and then CC everybody else, and I'm like,
No,
Right,
but
but
it's
it'll
the
work,
same.
so you can create a bland.
I know what I can create.
Yeah,
I know what I can
I
create.
use throwaway email addresses all the time.
I
I
know.
don't give out my
Just
personal
blind
one.
copy.
So I think, Jerry, and just to be clear, I think what Steve Miller was suggesting is that if you have a concern, you send it to the general manager, you can CC all the board members.
Right, the board.
Just the board members and the board president.
Yeah.
You know, make sure you put them in. I think that's what he was referring to.
That's right, I didn't mean to sound paranoid.
No, it's
It's
okay.
the number that
Question
needs to
for
keep
Michael.
growing. They need to see that we're going from.
No, we want to hear any and all comments. It's fine.
When you send out your emails in the mail, just to let you know, you're sending carbon copies. I can see everybody's email address that's getting sent
Oh, it should
the
go
town
BCC.
hall meeting, so you should BCC everybody.
You
Blind
wanna see-
carbon copies, so we can't see each other's email address. That's kind of what you're getting at.
Well, it's just
Oh,
that,
well, the MailChimp one doesn't have everybody's email on it, but the ones that were sent out before were. those
But also
ones.
with
I
Outlook,
think
you
it's
can do
important to the number
undisclosed.
rates,
It's,
not who.
you create a chain or a
I
group,
could tell who's.
everybody's in the group, but it doesn't display in the copy.
Correct. It'll just say town hall
Undisclosed
group.
recipients.
Right.
And they can't also get behind their assignment.
There's a list, there's some list that you're on, the ones that are sent that has, there's a group of us that are all on, so that one, you can see everybody that's on it, so there's like 8 or 10 of us on that one.
But also, her point is very valid also. A lot of us who have spoken out against the utility have had punitive actions taken against us. So I understand, the paranoia. I have it happening all the time. But there are ways around it. There's so many ways around it.
All right.
Yeah, I know.
We want our number to grow.
Yeah.
This number, in their eyes, they're going, whoa, 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 whoa. They don't need to see who,
Right.
other than that it's the community.
And I think, Jerry, the best place.
I can write a program that changes the email address to like ratepayer 1, ratepayer 2, ratepayer 3, even though it'd be your email address behind it. It could just have a display name of ratepayer 1, ratepayer 2, ratepayer 3, and it could have 30 of them in there. But yet your personal email address is actually what went out.
Well, whatever that would accomplish that, because
Yes.
our email addresses are nothing but a distraction for somebody that we didn't intend for them to see. It can only serve as a distraction. Our power is in the number growing.
Correct.
And in anonymity and being private makes more people more comfortable because, you know, that's just my
It is a false sense of security though, to let you know.
I know it is a false sense of security, but you're trusting. You're
Yeah, we're
trusting
all
this
in the
group.
system.
It is. I get that. I get that, but I was.
Can I ask everybody how they knew about this today?
From
How did you
Karen?
find out?
Karen.
Facebook.
Thank you, Karen.
Cindy and Steve.
Newspaper?
They just posted the meeting.
How many saw it in the newspaper?
No.
Only one?
Anybody see the newspaper? Which paper?
Is that?
I think I saw it.
Well, I saw it in the newspaper, but then I followed her update because it got canceled and moved, shifted. Because, so I don't trust the newspapers for the most accurate information. I will see it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, here, let's, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say that, there's a lot of people in the community, I think, that would like to, lend their support, but not everybody is as savvy with the computer as I'm hearing here. And,
I'll help
I
anybody.
would like to,
Seriously, I will help anybody who needs whatever it is you want to have set up so that you're protected or your privacy's there. I can do any of that. Just let me know. I'll do whatever you need. I usually fix everybody's computer and all that.
I think it needs to be, very easy for the community. It's not just these people here, I mean, there's a lot of people out there who have the same concerns, but they're a little bit more not coming to the meetings, or if it were easier to say, you know, wait a minute, what do you mean? Almost $100 and I don't have 1 cent of water, or if it were easier to speak.
But you have to think of the root cause of that problem. Why are people afraid to speak? It's because of a utility company that has been punitive against the ratepayer and the community that it serves. That is the problem, and that's what we really need to get to address.
Well, and
Well, I
think
guess
that
I'm
is.
backing up from that, is that not everybody, I mean, I can hear you folks talking about, you know, do this, do that on the computer. There's a lot of us who maybe email, you know, maybe go on Facebook, but we're not,
And
this
that's why I'm saying I'm
informed.
not
So
offering
it has to
services
be
to
easy.
anybody.
Yeah, it has to be easy for the community.
Well, and I'm not so sure that fear, for me anyway,
It's not
is the
fear.
right word. To me, it was like
not fear
the
for me.
best way to lend, getting a grassroots movement of
Right.
growing number of people that isn't open to distractions and all of the stuff that people in a small community or whatever, I mean, we see it in the nation. So, you know what I'm saying? Where there's all these distractions of emotional, that our intelligence kind of gets lost.
Correct, and
And this is an intelligent group of people that have a concern, and the number needs to grow. It's not fear, it's how can that effectively and efficiently be done that if somebody ever pushed the wrong button and we all went out and we were all exposed, what do we do?
Right.
We're all volunteers, but keeping that in mind, that's what we are a part of, is all that I'm saying.
correct, and we do expect that the town halls will grow, and they'll grow if you do it correctly.
Absolutely.
Invite all your
That's
friends.
what we want, is that we want this to be
Food
twice
helps.
as many people.
Food
It
does
does,
help.
it does. Thank you for your stipend paid for it. I just, kudos to you guys.
One thing about the meeting today, everybody needs to know that the St. James Church is having a great big spread at the IOOF Hall.
Right.
And a lot of people that I contacted about our meeting is going there.
And that's gonna,
That's
This
one
is
of the
free.
reasons this is small.
this is up here, there's some.
Oh, so we're competing with another event
Yes,
right
the
now?
St. James Church,
Okay.
their corned beef and cabbage, and a
Okay.
big raffle on silent
But you know what? Your water rates, if once they know the effectiveness of this in your water rates, somebody is gonna pass up another meal to come here to have a meal. If they know that this number can grow.
Yes.
And we have to offer that platform of,
We need to talk about that.
and this is a means of
I ate there,
communication,
and I'm
is a
here
means
too.
of that.
ate over there, and I'm here too.
And I'll just add quick, this is also brand new to the community, so Cindy and I, decided that we're gonna have town halls and make sure that this is transparent. So it's also to let the community know that we're here, and so we're trying to change the culture, so it's hard to, we know exactly what happened. You say something and there's a whole bunch of people jumping on you and attacking you, and it's like, what vested interest do you
You guys
possibly
may not
have?
realize it or say that it's that, but you are kind of campaigning. This is what people are going to vote for.
Yes.
So, I mean, you're not actively campaigning, but this is your campaign, so.
When is the next one?
The next one is April 13th, I believe.
That's where the next one is.
Oh, okay.
April.
I think it's, we're gonna celebrate Easter, and I think it's on Saturday. I think we're back of the Garden Valley. I think on the, I don't know, it's on my phone and my phone's recording.
You haven't
So-
been to Garden Valley, got rain.
We'll check on that for you, but
Saturday is
I was gonna suggest that, you know how you're saying that the GM will not let you put these meetings on the GDPUD, website? That if you want, we can put up a website real easily and put all this information on that website. Maybe something about, the Divide water
And then
community.
have the GM put a link on their
I was just gonna
website.
say, boy, wouldn't that be
Well,
something?
we asked them to, yeah.
And Stacy, we do. We have established a YouTube channel, so everything is going on the YouTube channel.
What do we
So
look
we
up?
post stuff, we download stuff.
What do we look up for,
The YouTube channel is, oh, there's
So
the next one.
is April 13th, and it's gonna be at the Marshall Branch Hall.
Yes, we're back up in Garden
Having
Valley.
deviled eggs?
Yeah, color double day, right?
Cindy, what's
So
the
if
YouTube
you,
look up?
if you join at the
It
bar
is
group, it has-
Water
it
Community
has all
Town
the-
Hall Meetings, so.
If you sign up on the thing, I'll send you the list of all the next ones. The one after that.
Okay. And a couple of things you guys want to cover real quick at the board meeting that happened is the board we did not approve the purchase of the tractor loader. Staff wanted to purchase a $100,000 John Deere tractor and loader, which would be primarily used in the yard to load gravel in the trucks to take out for work out in the field. They're using a backhoe for that now that's very, very old and it constantly needs repair. But with the rate increase freeze, the district is not going to be receiving about $210,000 in revenue. So if they're gonna be a little bit short in revenue, the board did not see fit in letting them spend $100,000 right now if they could continue to use the backhoe. With that being said, I received a phone call from a concerned citizen that they saw a River City rental flatbed deliver a loader to the yard up at the Main Street office. So they're renting one, so it must mean that the backhoe that they were using is now non-operational. And Mike did say he was signing checks for repair, so it might be down again and need repair. But right now they can rent one, or they can look for a used one, but we just didn't think that we could, the board was not comfortable letting them spend $100,000 on a tractor, so that's kind of been tabled until Daryl goes back and looks at what it would cost to possibly either rent one or buy a used one. And I do have to tell you, I was joy filled my heart when I saw two concerned water customers show up at the meeting and say that they did their due diligence to call around for tractor companies and get rental prices and get the cost of a used price. And I'm like, yes, I love my community members. They're awesome. They're doing what Mike and I would be doing, or anybody would be doing if they were on a limited budget. So we really appreciate the kudos of those community
Our
members.
community is on a limited budget.
Yes, they are.
Which is why people are crying they can't pay the bill.
Right.
Mike, could you bring up that YouTube page that you're talking about?
Yeah,
Because I want to see, can you post stuff on it, or?
No, it's a closed channel. It's my channel.
Okay.
Right now it's closed. But you can send me emails,
Okay.
and right now I'm limited to what they allow.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to bring to your attention is the This PR form that for $48,000 that the general manager was hoping to hire, it was pulled from the agenda item. The vendor was not able to show up, so the item was pulled. And I wonder if we're gonna see that back on the agenda for a future meeting, because I think the community members have made it loud and clear their viewpoint on this stance of the general manager already. So we'll have to see, but anyway, that was pulled from the agenda.
Was it a PR firm what?
It's a PR firm. Their packet was a very large packet of information that was in the board packet, and it's a PDF if you want to look at it on the line. There's a lot of information in there,
Right, but it's
Stacy.
a PR firm to do what about GDPUD?
In,
So
Like
it's
grant?
community outreach,
Outreach.
newsletters, all sorts of stuff, so I mean,
but it was to, there was, let me see if I can remember some of the line items in there. They were gonna put out a newsletter, they were gonna update the website, they were gonna put us on Twitter, they were gonna put us on Instagram, they were gonna just,
$750 per year in Facebook ads, so there was a lot of stuff which,
What's the
Facebook
purpose?
ads?
yeah, to increase the transparency, to increase the awareness, to
They have a
increase the
website
customer
they can do that.
service.
Do it on their website.
Exactly, and so that's what they were saying. Some of the items that they were mentioning that they were going to be doing, to me, the only thing that increased transparency was the newsletter. They already have updated the website, they just need to put the information from the old one back on it. They're populating that now, so they're working on that. There's things that they can do internal, they didn't have to spend $48,000, so I'm kinda hoping it doesn't come back on the agenda again, but that's a personal opinion. Karen?
They talked about, putting the newsletter in with our bill.
Correct, and they still, I think, want to do that.
That would be the cheapest way to go,
Right,
the
but
most
this,
sensible.
but this particular firm that they wanted to hire had that line item in there, and they had it as monthly. I don't think they realized it was
Yeah,
billed
because
bi-monthly.
they told them it was bi-monthly.
So he had like $7,700 for 12 newsletters, so we said, well, that would be 6. So we think that's a little expensive, but anyway, it was pulled off the agenda. The other thing that the board did not approve was the authorization for a Water Smart grant application, because it was a 50-50 matching fund for a 3-year project, and we didn't think that we could find $750,000. So grant money is always nice because it's free, but in this case, this free money was going to be matched, and we just didn't have the money for the match.
Yeah, it's not coming from Fund 40.
Correct, so, and then one of the items that came out of the strategic workshop with Dr. Mathis was a board budget committee. The board budget committee talked about having a couple of different functions. They would review budgets, they would review financial proposals, and they would try to see if they could find the money within the budget to hire an engineer. And that item it was not well received by the board, and we decided not to approve it because we said that's what the finance committee should be doing. And we didn't want a duplication of effort.
The other
Right,
thing
They
is,
spend more money.
the other thing I mentioned is the one tool that the board has to actually shape the direction of the water district is the budget. That's basically our only tool that we have, and that's something that we should do as budget workshop with all 5 board members. As Dave Halpin says, 2 of us would go and work on it and be knowledgeable. That's something all 5 of us should be. Then we'd be coming back and bringing it to the 5 of us anyway, so it was a duplication. So some committees, like the budget committee is one where that would be a duplication. Other committees, I think, that are worthwhile is like if we have a administrative policy committee where you look at all the policies and procedures and then bring this up. These are the things we need to review. So things that can be done where 2 people are looking at it and bringing it back to the board, as opposed to something that's the responsibility of the entire board.
So we'll just buzz through a couple of these other items just to bring you up to speed on the agenda. I was gonna just jump to the wastewater zone workshop that was held here at the Cool Hall on January 16th. It was,
Agenda stuff we got.
oh yes, okay, let's back up just a bit then. The board meeting last Tuesday, Mike and I did again add in the same items for the permanent record. We brought up again that we wanted items on future agendas. And again, we turned it in and we brought it to you as a handout so you can kind of see what we're turning in. We're gonna be turning that in every month. yeah, it's really important that we get some of those. There's so much business right now at the district that needs to be addressed, that Mike and I would love to go to 2 meetings a month. The other board members are not in favor of that. They've got family. Our president has a family, a full-time job, so his time is limited, and that's understandable. Everybody's time is limited. But there's
Yeah, I don't think you should have been a board member then.
there's so much business to do that if we keep on the pace that we're on now, it's going to be 2 or 3 years before we get a capable finance committee, and it's frustrating to me when we're dragging our feet like that when we don't need to be doing that.
And the finance committee doesn't have the vote.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Yeah, there was that. The vote for the finance committee was a fiasco. It was, you guys, I know. It was absolutely a fiasco. It was so embarrassing that I actually called the constituents and emailed some of those I couldn't reach the next day to apologize. The reason to me personally it was so embarrassing is, as I pointed out on 2 separate occasions to our board president, we don't have an appointment process. And when we have 5 applicants vying for 3 positions, how do you make that fair of who's you're going to appoint if you don't have an appointment process? And he said, well, we're going to do it by majority vote. And I'm like, okay, so how do you do that fairly? And he said, well, ladies first. So we have to get this finance committee topic on the agenda. This resolution needs to be refined, it needs to be updated, it needs to be fair, it needs to be accountable and transparent, and we need to know the processes. So what ended up happening is Dave Souza stood up on the whiteboard behind us and he wrote the candidate's name down, and then each board member wrote their name under that candidate's name that they voted for. And that was only after a discussion, a very brief discussion, where the board president, who took it upon himself, as it is in his right to do so because of the policy, to receive all the applicants, applications and resumes, review them, interview them, and bring his recommendations to the board. It also says in there he could appoint 2 board members to do that work. He had chose to do it himself, and that's, again, in his right to do so by the policy. But it doesn't bode well for me to have 5 candidates come before me and listen to his recommendation when 2 of the 3 of his recommendations were not the strongest in the skill sets with experience and skills and knowledge.
And this is a man that's too busy to do other things because of his family, which is not commendable, but I'm just saying, why did he choose to put so much?
Well, and to his benefit, that meeting, we started at 1 and went into closed session and came out, started the regular board meeting at 2. We got done about 6:30. We went back into closed session. I don't think we left until like 8 p.m.
Still,
So
if I'm too busy, I would
that was
have
a
2
long
board
meeting.
members doing it based on the qualifications, done.
Correct.
Move forward.
Correct.
And then go, and then let me know who they are, and that's what the most qualified.
Correct. So we did this scoring procedure, and when Dane made his suggestion on who he would vote, I said, well, I would like to vote for the 3 candidates that have the highest skill set, experience, knowledge, and abilities and experience. And so I said who I would vote for, and that's exactly how I voted. So we all voted, and we decided that Mitch got the most votes, so we put Mitch on. We decided to hold off on the other 2 because we had several candidates that were like a 3-way tie. So we decided to put it off. But again, when I brought it up twice to the president, what I was hoping he would say when I told him there is no appointment process, I was hoping he'd say, well, how would you do it? Now, I don't think he's ever going to give me a platform to succeed, so he didn't. He just ignored me. But I would have said, we score them on a sheet based on knowledge, skills, abilities, and experience, whatever criteria, from 1 to 5, 5 being the highest. And then in that criteria, we could easily use 1 being 1 year or less of experience, 2 being 2 years, 1 to 2 years of experience, and so on and so forth, up to 5, which could be, exceptionally qualified because you have maybe 5 plus or 10 years plus of experience. So we could have put those down, we could have written those down, we could have talked amongst 5 and voted, and he could have divulged who the highest members were without embarrassing us as board members, the 5 applicants, and the entire community that was there going, oh, you just gotta be kidding. So So we do need an appointment process, we do need that item on the agenda.
Because I even ended up changing my vote because of the way that it was, because they kind of were disparaging some people, so I ended up putting a vote for one of them just because of the way that they were being treated. It was not good at all.
How does the board decide who's president?
So we had a vote for it.
Yeah.
And if you came to our first town hall, we had quite a debate on that. So the thing going in, we knew going in that how it was done before, and we recommended that, especially with the way that the agenda was being done, that at least one of the previous board members should be presidents and one of the newer board members should be vice presidents. So there's a kind of sharing of the duties, but it didn't go that way, so.
Who's vice president?
Dave Halpin.
He's
So
one of the,
it wasn't one of the new board members?
he's a former board member. So your president, vice president are former board members.
What they call lawn board.
Yes.
So, Mike?
Well, during that election, Dave Halpin did state that if Dean wasn't doing a very good job, then he could be easily removed.
But it would take a vote of the board.
It'd take a vote of the board, you're right.
Which means 3.
Right.
And we'd have to bring it up on the agenda, which means it would have to go through.
And so
All right, bad idea.
Okay, well, let's see if we can move on here. I don't want to keep you guys here till midnight. The wastewater zone, the workshop that was done here, this was an agendized board meeting, and the water district did not make arrangements to either take minutes or record, but I audio taped it and I videotaped it. It's already up on our YouTube channel. So I've got several views on both of each, the audio and the video already. I think there was like 68 views on the video. So people are watching the YouTube channel, they are watching. So that was good, the information was shared. The thing that I didn't care for it is I didn't feel like our staff was prepared to meet the questions that they received from the community. They were not well prepared, which didn't make them look good. They also did not put current numbers in their report. They also did not show the cost of service to the individual lot types. In the ALT zone, there's 4 different lot types. There's the people that are on the community discharge system, what they call the CSD system. And in there's 2 different types of lots. There's a developed lot and an undeveloped lot. And then there's like 906 lots that are not on this community discharge system. They have their own independent vault and septic system and leach field. And they are either a lot that is either developed or undeveloped. So there's 4 different types of cost of service. The report did not show the individual lot types cost of service. You were lumped into a category of just either your CSD or your non-CSD. And the other thing I was a little disappointed in that the water district didn't bring up, and I could see why. It's not in their best interest to bring it up because it would lose money. But there is nothing stopping ALT, Homeowners Association, from putting together a steering committee and going to work with the Central Regional Water Quality Control Board to amend that permit. Think of it this way. If I'm just across the street and I've been there 30 years and I have my own septic system that I maintain, just like I do my siding, my windows, my roof, my gutters, whatever, why can't I just maintain my septic system? Why can't ALT residents do the same?
I know.
Why do 906 lots have to depend on GPUD's staff at an expense rate, at an overcharged rate, to check their septic system when they could do it themselves, like they do anything else that they maintain as a homeowner? So there's nothing stopping that, they can do that. So that wasn't brought up as an option, which I think is short-sighted.
It's only like about 100 homes that are on that community septic, not everybody. I'd say 80% of all homes have their own on-site septic.
Correct.
So
they could
yes,
do that.
I'm having to subsidize somebody else's septic system, which I'm not too happy about, because I'm not getting subsidized myself.
Correct. The other thing I noticed in that report is that the bi-monthly fees, they're still higher.
Yep.
They're at 65% when they should be closer to 50% again. So they're still being overcharged. And I put the table in here in your handout of the different types of lots and what their current fees are and what the proposed fees for. So these proposed fees were a credit, and this is the credit that Steve Miller was referring to. So what they propose to do is take this overcharge fund, that's their money, and give them a credit back out of it.
So that again-
And still overcharge them every month at the same time. Does that make any sense to anybody?
No.
No, it doesn't.
You have to correct the problem first and then refund the ratepayers.
Correct. Now, Fund 40, there's 3 funds that were set up for the ALT zone. There's 40, 41, and 42. And I listed them here. 40 is the unrestricted. That's all monies that can be used for anything in the zone, for any purpose. 41 was restricted. So it's restricted only for the people on that community discharge system to take a loan out. Let's say they have to replace a vault or a piece of the leach line or a field or something like that. That's what Fund 41 was for. 42 is restricted, and that's a reserve fund, again, just for the CSD. So there's quite a bit of money in Fund 40, and that's why Mike and I are going to watch it, because if it should be legitimately returned back to the customers, and the customers should have a cost of service done for each lot style of each lot type, and they should be charged according to the law, which is only for the cost of service. So when I say law, it's the permit. The permit that they have, which was, I think, put in 1984, says they can only be charged for cost of service. So they're being overcharged. They've not shown that cost of service. It didn't show them in this rate study what the cost of service was. So they decided to give them a credit back of their own money while they're still overcharging. So that workshop, I think, needs to come back before the community, but the general manager has it on his agenda, his list, his to-do list, to bring it before the board in April. So it'll be interesting to see what they bring before the board.
Because they had nothing to base on. They were going to cut our zone charge in half. But I didn't see anything for how they came up with those numbers.
Yeah, she didn't bring this study stuff with her.
Right.
Yeah, I
In
kept asking
fact,
for the
it was asked, Stacy, you asked for it.
many times, and they said it's on the website, SNOM's website. And I did download that packet you mentioned, it's not in there either.
Correct, and I remember, because when I went back and I put the audio tape together, which was like 4 sections, I remember because you asked for it, and she said, well, that's in the minutia, and you said, I want the minutia.
Yeah, and I still haven't got it. So, DRA, whatever y'all call them.
Correct, and then the last item I had was just to update you on the strategic workshop that we had. We had a strategic workshop for goal setting last year, and it was on Friday, I think the 31st of March. And it was started at 9, and I think it went to like 3 or 3:30, and it was on a work day. So the district received a lot of complaints about that. So this year they put it on Saturday all day. And I think we had 6 people show up. And we basically covered virtually the same thing. If you look at the reports, and I brought them last year for this year, and you put them side by side, they were virtually came up with the same thing. And there were several of us that voiced our concern prior to this workshop to the general manager saying, we don't need this. You haven't finished the goals that we set from last year's. Let's start from where we left off and go forward using that list and save ourselves $6,500. And by the way, $6,500 wasn't a line item in the budget for this, so I don't know how he paid for it.
Fund 40.
So, just a little side note there. But
GM slush fund.
so it was, again, we're waiting for the general manager to find the notes for that and put the meeting minutes up on the website. And one of the items that the board, that came out of that the board was on the agenda, we voted down. We're not gonna do the board budget committee. So personally, I feel it was a waste of time. And I hope we don't do another one next year. I think we can get more goal setting from the community of what the community wants done than we can from, and not to disrespect in any way Dr. Mathis or his wife. I mean, they have a job to do, and they did the job, and they did it well. But I don't think we can utilize his services. I think next year going forward, we got 2 years worth of goal setting he helped us come up with. We can start from there going forward. I don't want to spend another $6,500 to generate the same list.
I'll do it for $3,500. 2,000. Can I borrow your notes?
So basically, that's, I think, all I have. Mike, do you have anything else you want to add?
Nope,
Anything you can think of?
that's about it. Anybody had any questions or? The you want us to take to the board or the president?
Okay.
Any issues that you have?
I got really two on the list. Stacy, that was yours to ask about Zone 16
Yep.
and the excess water spillage, rain flow gauged, alarmed. And Steve Miller's suggestion of freeze fund 40. Stop spending money out of it now
Yeah,
until
I mean, I'll
that.
send an email this weekend, requesting or asking if they do it. And I'll put the water district on there as a CC, because I think it's a very good idea.
Okay. And if you have a chance to look over the questions and from the January town hall that the general manager answered, if you have any questions or concerns afterwards, any information about that you want to bring forward, Mike and I we put our emails, you know our emails, just email us and we will take the questions forward and bring you back answers.
Yeah, because he didn't really answer any of these.
Yes, you can see that he does.
And again, the cost analysis is nowhere to be found.
Right.
In fact, I really don't think they understand what cost accounting is. And so, because I see a real lack of cost accounting or cost analysis done on any project, on anything.
Right.
That they do there.
Correct.
That's one of the things I'm gonna look into, see if the new software has. We want to see if it has projections for even future stuff, so we can project out to the future. See if it has a capital asset management program, so all of the stuff that was done can be kept in there and followed up and updated with repairs and maintenance and leaks and warranties and all of those scheduling. So I mean, a lot of stuff now where there's no real records or it's in files all over the place. If it can all be compiled in one place where it's easy to go, okay, I want this, and they can just pull it up. That's the kind of system that we need.
Is there any money in the piggy bank for a PA system so we could hear the board
Yeah,
members?
it's easy, guys. They need
Really?
that.
Yeah, and I know that room was like a dead room too. It was just like
They should
nothing
have
was going out that time.
Nobody could hear, but if there is money available, I think the audience would really appreciate it.
Yes.
Or actually even maybe do a video, we could do online video with it, because the board moved the meeting to Tuesdays in the middle of the day so that people could not attend. A lot of ratepayers can't attend because of the time scheduling. And one of the things I want to ask them in one of these meetings, which will be coming up soon, is if they will change it back to where the ratepayer can attend these meetings. It's our
Which is
utility.
What was the meeting that I changed from, what was it before?
In the evening.
It was Tuesday,
It's not necessarily Tuesday, really the day of the week, not that.
right, but it was just an evening.
Yeah, it was in the evening, or sometimes on the weekend.
Correct. Mike and I have proposed, I don't think we brought it up recently, but we have proposed in the past that we move the board meetings around to different locations at different times in the evening. Go to Garden Valley, go to Cool, go to Georgetown, go to Greenwood, move it around so that different people have a chance to go at different times in the evening.
That's a good idea.
And they don't.
Well, they changed it, like I said, it was actually a punitive action by the last board, so that people stopped coming to the meetings, because a lot of them did get a little heated, but it doesn't matter.
And they're full now. We have standing room only a lot of times. In fact, I keep asking the general manager to move it to the church next door so we have more room, and he doesn't seem to think that we can do that. I think we burned that bridge.
The Tuesday at 2 o'clock.
Second Tuesday at 2 o'clock.
So, but yeah, we need a bigger room sometimes. Standing room only.
We definitely need a PA.
Yeah, we definitely need
Yeah, a
PA
better
system.
audio video, equipment, and with what they spend on all this other stuff, it wouldn't cost that much to upgrade that hardware.
Right.
So that we can get a better, because I've sat there and tried to listen to the tapes as well, but some of the stuff I'm getting is extrapolating that data, because I'm sending it to the district. And I have to show proof, and so with some of the things I've asked them, and so I'll get them the tapes, or the audio recordings, but it's, as you know, very muffled.
Right.
It's not very good quality, and I think it's really kind of, either they're incompetent and don't know how to do it, or B, they don't want us to have that information. It's one of two.
Okay.
That's the equipment. They got the small little.
Well, maybe they need to upgrade.
Yeah, that's a good
digital-
idea. It's a good idea. Okay.
Now, one of the things that was one of the pluses that community outreach people that showed up at our strategic workshop did recommend was having our meetings videotaped and put on the website.
Most local TOTs, small TOTs like this, you can go to, back in the day, Comcast used to give us a free channel, and we could just put it on there. That was great. Well, nowadays, it's very easy to just hook up the video camera and just stream it live.
Actually, that's something we can probably bring to our next board meeting, I can run it by Bill Thorpe to see if GPUD is something that our meetings can be broadcast on Channel 16, because there is a community station, so.
Yeah, they've got a website, it would be very simple to put it on the existing website. We don't have to do anything outlandish, except getting better audio recording
So I'll
equipment.
run that by the GM and then see.
Okay.
what's up.
But a live stream is very easy. I used to go to, I forgot what meeting it is, and actually record it. I just take my laptop and I would record it, the audio live. I didn't do video. And I forgot what, it was, I think it was a school board meeting they used to go to down there in Georgetown, something like that.
You know, Stacy, I set up our YouTube channel to accept live streaming, and I can live stream it with my phone.
Then
If I
there's
can
not a
set that
problem.
up somewhere in the standing room only small room, then I
Yeah,
could
but
live
I've
stream it,
got
but it'd
a
have to
lot
be
of
close enough,
video
and we'd have to have a
equipment.
PA to pick it up, because this picks up voices that project and loud,
Yeah.
and on the microphone great, but it doesn't pick up your voices if you're not using microphone, so.
Right, well, you can set.
Still need a PA
microphones,
system.
You know, throughout, you know, put them on the stand. I've got a lot of AV equipment.
But yeah, I could live stream this to you,
And, yeah, we
to our
can live
YouTube
stream.
channel. I'm sorry, Brian?
Oh, I just got a quick question. You mentioned Channel 16. How's that work?
Oh, Bill Thorpe does the video for Comcast 16, which is the public channel for the community. So
It's free. They
it's
teach you how to use the
nonpartisan.
equipment.
And GPUD's a nonpartisan.
Where do you get Channel 16? Channel 16 on what?
Yeah.
You have to have Comcast.
Gotcha.
Oh.
But it's also on. It's also, there's a website you can probably get the videos, and he has a YouTube too, so you'll be able to. You can probably set it up where it shows up on the websites
Yep.
and Facebook.
I mean, because it's all recorded in a certain raw format, it can be projected on anything.
Right,
But
right.
the ability for us to push this forward will be dependent on what happens with the community outreach public plan, which has all of that stuff in it as well, so.
The best thing you guys can do for us is continue to show up at the meetings, continue to send your concerns forward, not only to us, but to the general manager, to the board president, CC all the other board members. Just any concern that you have, just keep pushing it forward, and we'll see if we can make some changes. And then share as much information as you can, like Steve Miller suggested, and we've heard here today. Share it with all your friends. Tell the person, tell the checker at Marvell, or Holiday, hey, did you hear about, did you know about? You want to hear something interesting? Go check this out. Let's see if we can get more and more people engaged. Because Mike and I are finding it's tough to get people involved. It's really tough.
As Jerry
Everybody's so
said,
busy.
she doesn't want to, you want to be anonymous, and then when that happens, there's board members that think it's the same 25 people. It's like, well, there's 7,000 people, but it's just this 25. But it's really not. But I mean, everybody doesn't have the time to come forward. It doesn't want to commit. It doesn't want to put themselves out there. So I mean, it's more. I mean, when you see 25, that's the tip of the iceberg. Usually, is what happens.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming. Unless anybody has any questions, that kind of concludes what we have to share with you today. And thank you again for spending your afternoon with us.
Can I get your picture with the hats on?
Thank you. Very, very good.
Thank you. What happened
Flowers are wet.
Yeah, they're pretty small, aren't they? Yeah, they're pretty. That is so cool.
Okay, do we